And we are live. Welcome, everybody, to another High Vibe conversation. I'm your host, Shel Shapiro, and with me today are three of the amazing High Vibe women with heart. And we have a special guest with us here, too, Davida Ginter. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for being here. Morning, evening, afternoon, wherever you are in the world joining us from. Today, we're talking about burning out. And I'm really excited to talk to Davida and the ladies about this because I have definitely burnt out, as I'm sure so many of you can relate. And I know Davida and Linda, you've got her book, so I don't know if you want to hold it up. But Davida, you talk a lot about what happens when we don't take our own advice and how we can keep going and when we burn out that we're not going to get anywhere doing that and doing all the things. So I think that's a really great place to just jump in and get started. So Davida, why don't you introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, and then let's dive in on what burning out actually looks like and what we can do to prevent it.
Yeah, absolutely. So thanks for the invitation to join this conversation. My interest in the topic of burnout started almost coincidentally a few years back when I was chatting with a friend and colleague of mine. And we were referring to a few of our colleagues, changemakers, who work also with other changemakers and leaders and managers. We do a lot of work within organizations with managers and etc. And we have noticed that so many of our colleagues and also the people we've been working with are stressing out and then get burnt out. And we thought this is so ironic that people who care so much about everyone else, the system and your communities and other people, they forget to take care of themselves. We've worked a lot with sustainability practitioners and they neglected their personal sustainability. And with this question in mind, why is this happening and why to change makers and leaders in particular? I just started to explore this topic. I thought I'd just write an article, and then stories kept pouring at me. And so it became a book, and it grew to be a global initiative in Enkindle Global that focuses on burnout prevention and cultivation of well-being. And this is also how we started working with multiple organizations and systems. We wanted to tap into the systems level. And today we do many things around learning and development and employee retention and well-being. But this is how it all basically got started a few years back.
I love that. Thank you for sharing because, like I said, so many, not just women, but people in general can relate to stressing out so much that they don't take care of themselves and doing all the things for everyone else, but they forget to do for themselves first. And Dorit, I'm going to hop over to you for a second because I know you've gone through the burnout just like I have, and then some. What was this like for you?
The burnout process took a while. I kept neglecting all the red flags. I just kept piling on more and more stuff to do with a full-time job, no one to step in if I got ill. So I felt I had to go because if I was at home, the shop had to be closed. And I didn't have the heart to do that until it was so bad that I ended up in a hospital. And of course, with 5 kids, they needed attention and they needed follow-up with school and everything. And I just remember getting more and more tired, more and more unfocused, kept forgetting stuff, aches and pains all over, didn't have enough hours in the day to anything other than helping everyone else. So self-care was a quick shower and maybe some nail polish if we were visiting friends. That was about it. So there was no time for recreation or taking a day off or going away for a weekend or I didn't even consider things like meditation. That was not even close, because I was never alone. Well, in the car from work, that's like a 15-minute drive. That was the only time I was alone. And it's not good to meditate in the car while you're driving, I think. So I skipped that. Yeah, but I had a severe burnout. I pushed myself so far that I actually ended up with 2 chronic illnesses, and I was out of commission for 7 years before I found my healing help, and was able to get back on my feet again, and I'm able to function without having the family helping me or anything like that. So yeah.
Thank you, Dorit, for sharing about your burnout experience. And I can relate to that. In my experience, like, I had other physical symptoms too. Like, I had really, really bad acid reflux. That, like, and you would think all of these things are individualized problems, that they're not all related, but they very much are. I gained a lot of weight in a very, very short period of time. I found out that I had like Hashimoto's, which is a thyroid issue. I was having panic attacks and anxiety attacks. They're not the same. Like, I wasn't sleeping, I wasn't resting. Like, I was just never powered off to recharge. And so knowing that this can manifest itself physically and mentally in so many different ways, Davida, is this in line with a lot of the stories that you were hearing from other people?
It definitely is. The thing is that our body is a very smart organism. It's a very smart system, right? And sometimes the body knows first, or our head and body, they know at the same time, but we really don't want to believe the story. And sometimes we need that wake-up call from our body, just basically telling us, stop. You need to stop, and you need to reconsider what you are doing. But the weird part is that many of the stories have been shared with me. Uh, People have generously, really openly shared their stories with me. And there's the interesting part that some of them told me, we were also aware of the physical signs, the physical symptoms, but we still couldn't pause because we still felt responsible for so many things, to carry that responsibility. And so we just kept pushing. I've interviewed one person who told me, even when I was hospitalized, I still didn't listen to the doctor and I kept working. And only when I got to the last session of the day, she's a coach, only when I got to the last session and I suddenly couldn't remember that person's name, only then I realized I have a problem, right? So even the physical problem was not enough to alert her, but it was the processing in her mind, her memory, that started, playing games with her. Then she realized that there's something wrong there. And we hear this all the time. And I think it's even more than the part of that self-care that you mentioned before. Just, a couple of weeks ago, a friend of mine from university texted me, hey, Davida, I'm struggling. I think I'd love to talk with you if that's okay. I said, of course. We haven't talked for a few years now. So we get on a call. He's a wonderful, wonderful guy. He founded a huge NGO in Canada working with homeless people. Really a lovely person, huge heart. And he told me, suddenly I'm having these heart issues, and I'm a young guy. He's 30-something years old guy. Why is this happening? And he kept sharing, and he told me everything was going on well, but then I started taking missions on myself that I wasn't familiar with, to hire a team, to become a manager, to become a leader of people, not just the mission. Navigating through tough conversations. So it's more than the self-care. It's the idea that we grow, but we are sometimes, he wasn't reaching out for help, for example, before that. So he felt unsupported. So yeah, there's this part of self-care, but it's more than that. It's who is supporting us when we are doing our work. We all want to feel heard, seen, and valued. And if those ingredients are not, if those needs are not being met, then we are very likely to experience or approach burnout.
Yeah. I know in like the work that I've done with Stina and with Linda in particular, like we work a lot on like exploring like the things that our body and recognizing what's going on in our body and like our immediate yeses and nos and like understanding where we're feeling something so that we can know how to proceed with that and honor ourselves. Stina or Linda or both of you, how can tapping into our body and like our symptoms as they present themselves in different areas, how can that help prevent people from burning out? Like what can we do to do a better job of recognizing those things? Or no. Maybe that's not the question.
So I would say that for me, learning my body's cues, and I think it really is cues because, when Davida said something about like the head and body, like your mind has the ability to override what your body is feeling for good reason, because there are times where you need to be able to push past discomfort in order to do something that's new. And so that's a good thing. When it becomes something that we rely on to get through our days and to get through our weeks, and it's like an overused skill, then we start to override pain and we start to override harm and hurt and damage to our body. So it's learning where that line is between, this is uncomfortable and I'm still safe, or this is new and feels risky, or I might need to push myself a little bit, but it's temporary. It's just something that I'm tapping into for that strength versus I'm going to keep running on, this energy, which just is basically adrenaline, cortisol, like all of the stress hormones, right? We need those and they're really helpful. They're just not helpful when that's what you're depending on to get you through your life. And so then it just like wears on you when you have those pumping all of the time and you're in this constant state of alert, arousal, overwhelm. And that's where like kind of reintegrating or rebalancing like the communication between your mind and body. And I find that like once you really do the body work, then it's like easier to do the thought work. So I posted something last week about how, when you're writing copy and thinking about speaking your message, Davida was talking about being seen and being heard. So like being visible, it all comes back to the clarity of your mind and the clarity of your thoughts. And somebody commented and said something to the effect of, well, I don't think about my thoughts because my most potent writing comes up through my body and just flows out of me. And I thought it was interesting because that person saw it as a disagreement with me, that they don't think about their thoughts, that they do something different. And I thought, no, our bodies and minds they're all part of the same organism. So it's not like your mind has to be at odds with your body, or that the mind is somehow wrong or evil, or your ego has to be like taken out of the game completely. It's just that like cooperation and communication between your mind and body. Because if you use your mind to just notice those times when you are at an elevated state, and can start to become aware of like what's kind of building up to get you into that state, or what's keeping you in that state, then you can start to address those things like in a more methodical way, like one thing at a time, to decrease that level of anxiety and stress. Because for me, when you get into that burnout stage, it's like you can't do it all at once because you're burned out. you can't look at the whole picture and fix it all at once. It takes time to come down, and then it takes time to integrate neutral, and then it takes time to build back up. So there's different stages of like that healing from it when you're integrating the mind and the body together.
I think that's a great way to approach it, is we often use the word reconnect with ourselves, or the phrase, but it actually holds up. It makes sense here, I promise. To slow down and recognize what can we do right now? Instead of doing all the things, what's the thing that's within our control, that we have the capability, we have maybe enough energy to push through and do this one thing, instead of I need to be here, and have all these things done at the exact same time by the same deadline for all these different people. No, we can take those things off our plates and just look at the immediate, like what's the most urgent, or what do I have that I can do right now. So yeah, thank you for reminding people that they don't have to do it all at once.
But it begs the question: if we are arriving at the situation when everything becomes urgent, how was this situation created? So part of the thing about planning our well-being, and that to treat well-being not as a random solution, but more of a routine that we can design. Part of it is to anticipate what will become urgent and what is important, and people oftentimes confuse the two. Or, well, it's more than just those two, but because if we are reaching to this point when everything is urgent and we feel so stressed because of all those stressors, and on top of that, we now meet new challenges because, hey, this is life, right? Then there's something there in our routine that hasn't been balanced in a way that suits us. I'm not talking about work-life balance. I don't think this is even applicable anymore after COVID. I'm talking about a different type of balance, which refers to the way how can we balance our needs. And for example, you mentioned before, Dory, that the only time you had for yourself was when you were in the car. So clearly you see the need there. I need some me time, right? I need some time alone to process, to rethink, to re-energize. And identifying that and designing the routine in a way that will meet this need and will balance that, complement what is needed there. That's the way to plan in advance as much as possible, because we can't anticipate all the obstacles and challenges, obviously, but we can plan for a routine that nourishes us, that supports our well-being on a more continuous basis, on a regular basis.
There's actually a book out there called Tyranny of the Urgent.
Right.
It's an old one. Yeah. It's interesting when I think about my maternal grandmother and my mom. They were, I would say, somewhat preventive. And I was the one that taught them, like supplements and all of that. So I'm not talking about preventive medicine so much. It's just what will get you sick and what will get you sicker. They were very preventive to keep from getting sicker, or keep me from getting sicker. So when I was little, my grandmother would be called over to the house to sit and hold me down, because when I was sick, I was really hyper, and I would start shooting a fever. And then when I lost my father to suicide just before going in my senior year of high school, and then come like January, February, I had a gymnastics accident and lost my dance career. And my leg was so swollen, my foot was so swollen, I had to stay home. I couldn't even go to school for a month before they could even get a cast on it. And I was like super entwined in my world. Like everybody depended on me, and I was just freaking out. I was letting everybody down. And my mom was like, the world's going to go on without you. And if my mom hadn't done that, and I hadn't had that sort of like awakening, I would definitely have been someone who would have suffered from burnout for sure. So, Davida, when you talk about having support, even with our own children, supporting them to see that they're not the end all be all. Life will go on without them, and it is okay to take time for themselves. And I mean, even like with my father, when I found out he died, I was just like, oh, I don't have a dress to wear to the funeral. So like I went out and got material and a pattern and made a dress. It was just always just gas on. So my gymnastics accident probably brought my body to that gas off place. And then my mind was able to comprehend what my mom was actually telling me. And I'm very grateful for that.
Yeah, well, thank you for sharing that. And what your mother basically did was teaching you a very valuable lesson about resilience, because if you're just going through the tough experience, maybe, like you said, you wouldn't know how to deal with that later on, or maybe you get burned out. But what she told you, yes, you're going through a rough time, and the world will continue to move without you, and you can take some time for yourself, and you can receive the support that you need. She embodied support. And this is how we learn resilience, through challenging experience, but also the ability to take something from there and apply it to future situations. This ability to bounce back after setbacks, it's been learned through a lot of trial and error.
So, how do we build up this resiliency? How do we build up the support around us for those of us beyond this live, but beyond the 5 of us? How do we support others more so that they know that they can bounce back and that feel supported to do so?
Well, if this is a question to me, let's take a short exercise. All right, so let's take a couple of minutes and think about an experience, a challenging experience in your life, but one that you handled well. So one that was really challenging for you, maybe put some pressure or stress on you or your loved ones or something like that, but you handled that very well. You managed that. You came stronger from the other side of it. So find something like that. Imagine that for a minute. And the next part would be to map for yourself. Sometimes I even encourage people to put pen to paper, because it's so helpful to write those things down. But it's just an exercise, right? So try to map for yourself what were the tools, the resources that you use to manage that well. And once you identify those, you are starting to build your resilience toolbox. You're starting to identify your internal and external resources, because resilience is roughly divided into those two: internal resources, external resources. But we probably can only use them proactively after we learn to identify them and what's working for us. What is working for you is not necessarily suitable for me. So it's a very personal experience. It's a very personal inquiry process. But once we identify those, let's say that in this experience, I suddenly realized that the best part for me was to take a pause, go outside, and come back and respond to the situation instead of react. So I just learned something very important for myself that I can apply now in a new context. And this is a very healthy way to build resilience, because we learned it on ourselves rather than blindly follow others' advice that is not necessarily suitable for us, doesn't serve us in the best possible way. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. It reminds me of like, oh, that must be where my pleasure list instead of having goals idea comes from. Because like, what do you do when you have nothing to do, right? So it's like I had schoolwork, or I could do something that I enjoyed. So I just let my schoolwork happen when I felt like doing it. And I made a smock and embroidered like kind of like that Mexican embroidery on the yoke of it, and then did all the hand trimming. And my mom said she could even tell how much pain I was in based on how my stitches were coming out. And so that was even another place where she awakened me, because like I didn't notice that until she noticed that. So yeah, so now I just have the pleasure list and it works out great. 22 books later, worked out great.
What's coming up for me right now as you led us through that exercise, Davida, is that can also be applicable to company training and corporate situations. In fact, as you're building this network, like you personally, you're building this network of amazing corporate trainers and speakers and professionals that can help people teach others how to be more resilient and feel supported in doing so. And they could probably even benefit from doing that simple exercise when they first get onto your page and be like, all right, let's think of a time that your team or your employees were really under pressure, were really under the gun and handled it well. And like, how could we what else do we need in our toolbox to like keep doing those and build it up better? And like having them go through that exercise so that they know exactly what kind of trainer and workshop they need to bring, and they're in a better position to then hire and bring people on accordingly. So I think it's applicable from a personal standpoint for what do we actually need as individuals, but I think it can also really help grow companies and teams. So I don't know if you had considered that yet, but I know we had previously talked about things like this, and it's being built right now. So yeah.
No, we're definitely doing this exercise already with teams, with departments, with senior management. And this goes under the umbrella of appreciative inquiry. So basically we go and explore what is working well and how can we keep using that. And sometimes it's just eye-opener, because the thing is that the wisdom is already there. This is really not about bringing new wisdom into the room. This is about tapping into existing wisdom with the help of the collective, just holding the container for them. That's it. As simple as that.
Yeah, I love as this is coming together. So you have your book, Burning Out. It's available on Amazon, correct?
Yeah, sweet. Oh, thank you.
we will share that link in the chat for anybody who's interested in getting it. Where can people find out more about the collective?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, we are now building this network of experts, facilitators, speakers, consultants, people who can come and share their expertise with companies, with organizations of all kinds, by the way. And we call it API. API, I can put quickly drop in the chat. So API.ai. And basically the idea is to identify organizational needs and match them with the experts who could meet those needs in different areas, well-being and resilience and communication and stress management and leadership and even presentation skills, everything that could really help people enhance their capacities personally, but also within the organizational context. And feel free to reach out to us. We are now building this global network, so we are really with open arms, welcoming people who would like to get involved. And yeah, this is us.
Yes, thank you so much. Again, I will drop your book link and the information for Uppy into the chat for everybody to be able to connect and reach out if they are looking for that additional support, and even to just read more stories about burning out so that they feel like they're not, so that they know they're not alone if they're already going through it. This has been a wonderful burning out conversation. Hopefully we've dropped some knowledge and insights so that people can feel more supported and know what to do to start knowing what they need and tapping into it instead of ignoring those warning signs between brain and body. Tune in next week for another high vibe conversation. We'll be back, same shell time, same shell station. This is the High Vibe Women with Heart, and our special guest, Davida Ginter, saying goodbye for now.
Thank you. Goodbye.